Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown with me, John Ferguson. It is Bledisloe 2, a sold-out stadium at Perth awaits the All Blacks and the Wallabies, and I cannot wait for this contest to get underway because what we saw last weekend in Auckland at the famous Eden Park was, in the end, after all emotional energy was taken out of it, an absolute humdinger of a game, beg your pardon. So I'm really, really excited to get into this contest. And what we're going to do today is preview the two sides that have been announced today and a little bit of what we can expect tactically from both sides heading in. And at the end, we'll get into a bit of a prediction as well. Before we head in, I just want to say, please, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button down here. It really helps me to reach more rugby lovers like yourself with more content, and that way I can continue to produce more and more rugby content for you guys, particularly as we head into the back half of the year and we're going to head to Europe for the end of year tour. So I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the Northern Hemisphere sides, might be doing some URC stuff as well as Premiership rugby because there are a lot of Australians up there, but there's also a lot of good rugby being played there as well as the top 14. So don't forget to like and subscribe the video. And please, if you think something about the video, if something sparked a thought, or if you want to debate a selection and you think that it's Joe Schmidt or Scott Robinson should have gone with someone else, please stick the ideas down here in the comments below, and I'll be down there with you as well. So without further ado, let's go into the sides. We'll start off with the Wallabies. So Joe Schmidt has unveiled his 23-man squad to play at Optus Stadium in Perth. And I tell you what, there are some big ins, but perhaps some even bigger outs. So no Angus Bell in the front row, as you can see there. James Slipper, Billy Pollard, Alan Alatoa, and all Brumbies front row starting for the Wallabies. And it is with a heavy heart to say that this is James Slipper's final game in the international arena. He's still going to be playing Brumbies next year in the Super Rugby Pacific competition, but unfortunately, this is indeed his last moment in a Wallabies jersey for now. Perhaps he does a little bit of a Johnny Farnham like Nick White has been doing for the Wallabies and coming back out of retirement straight away. But we'd hope that we get to send James Slips away with a win in Perth, where his career started over 15 years ago. Let me just get up some stats because he is the record holder. He is only the third test player to tick over 150 tests. So he's behind Alan Wynne-Jones at 171 and New Zealand's Sam Whitelock at 153. So he is an agonizingly one test short of surpassing Sam Whitelock, but I'm sure that that won't matter to him. He's part of a very illustrious career of those two second rowers. He's just the third player to reach 150 tests, as I mentioned. Debuted in 2010 at 21 years old. And yeah, earlier this year, James Slipper became just the fifth Wallaby in 126 years to play in two separate British and Irish Lions series alongside greats like John Thornett in 1959 and 1966, Peter Johnson in 1959 and 1966, Tony Miller in 1959 and 1966, and George Smith 2001 and 2013. Joining Jay Smith as the second player to achieve the feat in the professional era. Slip holds the Australian record for the most test caps and is the most capped international test prop of all time, 14 clear of Ireland's Keane Healy. So it is just a long, long list of just great achievements by such a good man. Slips really is a person of the people, and he is now hopefully being sent into the sunset with a win against the All Blacks, which will break a drought, I think, stretching back to 2020, if I'm not mistaken. So, let's have a look at the rest of the team. Will Skelton, that is a big in for the Wallabies in the second row, then partner Nick Frost. What this is going to do is really bulk up that scrum, and the scrum looked good last week without even getting near to being dominant. Both sides, both the New Zealanders and the Wallabies, definitely went to test that area of the game hard. Didn't quite get there in the end, trying to milk a couple of penalties out of each other. Will Skelton's going to help anchor that part of the set piece, and as well, he's going to be able to enforce and also supplement the relatively good maul drive of the Wallabies, which we saw them get 2 tries out of last weekend at Auckland. So that's going to be a really good part of his game that he can add. Obviously, the Wallabies do lose a line-out option with Will Skelton there. But Joe Schmidt has been brave and smart enough to be able to keep Tom Hooper at number 6. So that means they have got Nick Frost and Tom Hooper, one over 2 meters, 204 centimeters, I believe, and Nick Frost, and 199 centimeters, so it's extremely mobile and quite light for how tall he is with Tom Hooper. So he's going to be very mobile. That is two genuine targets, along with obviously Harry Wilson, who's been taking a couple of lineouts. And when you've got Will Skelton, someone as strong and big of his size, you can put someone up like Fraser McWright up, and he will do a pretty good job of it as well. With Will Skelton in the lineout, we saw during the British and Irish Lions tour that the Wallabies got very creative with the lineout, throwing to the front, throwing over the top. So we will see how they continue to evolve this part of their game to be able to accommodate for such a key but big man in the lineout with Will Skelton. Obviously, his more destructive power on the defensive side is second to none. And so the All Blacks are going to have to be really careful when and where they choose to go to line, because I think that that's going to be Will Skelton's one of his number one jobs, one of his top jobs for the evening, to absolutely decimate the All Blacks maul, and I expect him to be able to do so after the great form the Wallabies showed on maul defense last weekend. Heading into the back row, Wilson and Fraser Wright retained. Beg your pardon. Heading into the back line, that's where the big changes happen. So Tate McDermott, unfortunately, going to have to undergo some surgery for the injury sustained to his leg last weekend, which forced him off early. Jay Gordon comes back from injury. I believe that was an adductor or a hamstring injury or issue, but now he is back. He's straight into the starting side alongside long-time Waratahs partner Kane Edmund. And I think James O'Connor and Ryan Lonergan, they played 80 minutes together last almost 80 minutes together last weekend in Auckland. And obviously, Jake Gordon and Tate Edmund have that Waratahs connection. So this is all working off the experience matched with the cohesion and the continuity from different partnerships. So I think this is really smart from Joe Schmidt. Interesting enough that he didn't trust Edmund enough to put him on at the back end of the game last weekend, but then now he's starting, and with having Edmund start, it is an interesting thought. My personal take on it is that you don't want to thrust a young player into a situation where it is very much on a knife's edge. And it was only that the Wallabies lost the game in the last 8 minutes with that yellow card to Harry Potter and the subsequent try to, I believe it was Cam Roigard there at the end. Very great try set up by Geordie Barrett and Quinn Tupaea. So it makes sense in the halves. I'm just a little bit unsure about how this is going to go at test level, but Jake Gordon brings a really good box kicking game as well as great explosivity and pace when ball in hand. So we'll see how that goes. In the centers, Joseph Akuso, Suoli, and Lenny Kitao combined once again. I am su- not surprised, but I wish we would be able to see a Hunter Paisami at 12, Lenny Kitawa 13, and a Joseph Kuso Suoli on the wing. I think it was mulled over on between two posts on Stan Sport this week between Sonny Bill Williams and Michael Hooper at how effective Lenny Kitao could be in the 13 channel, both in attack and defense. And it's just such a shame that we haven't been able to see Lenny Kitao, who Sonny Bill Williams calls one of the best, if not the best 13 in the world, play in his natural position to be able to fit Joseph Akuso Suoli in there. So I'm hoping to see a little bit more out of both those players, particularly on the distribution side, because I do think that our wingers were neglected a little bit about getting their ball or their fair share of ball last weekend. So that'll be interesting to see how the backline changes, if it has, if it, how the backline strategy changes, if at all. Moving on to the back three, Filippo Dangunu comes in for a Corey Toole, who drops out of the 23 entirely. Perhaps a bit harsh, but he has struggled to be able to find real true form after his stints in South Africa. And I think that Filippo Dangunu adds a little bit more size, aggression, and also breakdown prowess there. He is known to pilfer, and he does quite enjoy getting into the rough and tough stuff. So it is really good to see him on the wing. Harry Potter retains his position after a really good attacking performance last weekend. We just need to see a little bit better communication and also claiming the high ball, because he was beaten on a number of occasions by Caleb Clarke, Will Jordan, and he just wasn't great in defense, missing 3 tackles, I believe. So he needs to shore that up, but it's really difficult when you're marking a powerful winger in Caleb Clarke. But unfortunately, his job doesn't get any easier this weekend with Leicester Fainga'anuku coming back from France into the All Black squad, and he is a very powerful, big, fast man. So Harry Potter, lock those shoulders in, see how you go. And then also likewise, Filippo Dangunu, you're going to have to really lock down your side of the field and make sure that you're corking really well with fullback Max Jorgensen in his second test appearance in the 15 jersey. And I think that after last weekend and the video that I did review, so go back and watch that if you didn't, there's some video analysis on there. Max Jorgensen struggled a little bit with positioning, and we didn't see him kick a whole lot. We did see him hoof it a couple of times, but he didn't really peel off any territory in the sense of getting the ball out. And I think that's just something he'll want to work on. Likewise, he probably was a bit too deep because Joseph Akuso Suaalii tends to drop back as well. So that means they almost have three full players in the backfield with a winger kind of sweeping on either wing. And so I think that with that in mind, Max Jorgensen can probably afford to come forward a little bit. We don't want to see a ball go over his head, but he also doesn't want to be covering 25 meters plus to be able to get to a high ball that Harry Potter or Filippo Dangunu, that was the case last weekend, are not in a position to collect. So you do really want to be able to see that improved on by Max Jorgensen. Now on the bench, we've got Josh Nasser, Tom Robertson, and Taniela Tupou. These are massive changes in the scale of things. Brandon Payne and Moses, the biggest hooker that the Wallabies have at their disposal, great at set piece time, and it is without his weight at scrum time. Likewise, without Angus Bell's weight and ball running ability off the bench. Nothing said too much about whether it's injury or whether it's just genuinely a rest period, but I would assume there's some sort of niggle because he's a player you definitely do want to bring on to make an impact on in the second half. So watch that space. Keep an eye out on the articles online. Taniela Tupou off the pine this time. I think that's really good because Anna Toa before his injury was absolutely ace, and Taniela Tupou can bring on that kind of impact off the bench, whether it's in the set piece and the scrum, which he's been doing quite well, or whether it is indeed in the loose. He's been carrying a lot and he's been getting up off the ground and making repeat efforts. So I'm excited to see that. No, Lukan Salakaia-Loto retained. That was a bit of a shame. I was really hoping to see a 1-2 punch with him and Skelton. We haven't seen that yet on any test actually so far for a while. So it is a bit of a shame. I would have liked to have seen he had a good game, really made good meters with the carry, really aggressive in defense, and not penalized once. So he had 100% 8 from 8 tackle record, I believe. So it is just a shame that he's not rewarded with another opportunity. Instead, Western Force captain Jeremy Williams comes in and with the braves and the courage and the smarts of Joe Schmidt to be able to keep Tom Hooper on the field in the number 6 jersey means that Rob Valetini is coming off the bench in the first time in God knows how long. That is super exciting for the Wallabies because he is one player that's definitely going to add impact, impetus, and a lot of gain line carry. So that is going to be awesome to see what he can do off the bench. And I can't wait for that moment to come. James O'Connor, as I mentioned, on the bench alongside Ryan Lonergan. That partnership is going to have the skills, the experience, and this weekend, the execution to be able to really go to the well and make sure they can close this game out or bring it home in the end. Josh Fluke in the 23 jersey is somewhat of a bizarre call because I just feel like Hunter Paisami is made for that role. And with the injuries to Andrew Kellaway, and obviously it's quite an inexperienced backline. Hunter Paisami, who has over 20 caps for the Wallabies, has a centre partnership well established with Lenny Kitao and can cover that 10-12 with Joseph Akuso Suaalii, cover any of the back three positions, likewise with James O'Connor. I feel like with Hunter being able to put him in there and add a little bit of punch and impetus in the midfield was an opportunity lost here by Schmidt. So it'll be interesting to see how they go because, in all honesty, I feel like it was a good picked side, but not absolutely the one that I would have gone with. But again, I'm not the Wallabies coach and I'm not seeing what's going on there. So in Joe Schmidt, we trust. Now, let's go on to the All Blacks. So for the All Blacks, Scott Razor Robertson has rung some changes, some of them injury enforced, other ones not so much. So this is really interesting. First up, we see the front row there. We've got Tamati Williams in for an injured Ethan de Groot, who suffered a concussion last weekend. We've got Fletcher Newell coming in for a Tyra Lomax, who appeared to have a hand injury at one point of the game. So I'm assuming that's where that injury has crept up from, and that's why he's not been retained in the 23 at all. Then Scott Barrett comes in, the captain for the All Blacks, but this is really interesting. Actually, no, he's been retained as captain. I believe. Yes, he has. Sorry, I didn't see the C there. Scott Barrett as captain comes into the All Blacks alongside Tupou Vaa'i. And that means that Simon Parker retains his spot on the flank with Fabian Holland dropping out of the 23 in total. And the back, that's Peter Lakai coming in with some explosive carry ability. And the matchup between Valetini and Wallace Tate coming off the bench, that is going to be a collision and a matchup worth the price of administration on its own. Admission on its own. So that's going to be really exciting. It's going to be interesting to see how Peter Lakai matches up with the likes of Savia and Parker. I think that all those three players can do everything in the back row. So they are very much carriers, tacklers, pilferers. But it will really be interesting to see what kind of role Peter Lakai has from Scott Robinson and what he tries to really focus on in the game if he does have a focus at all. Next, I think in the back line, things that have changed with DMAC coming in number 10 with an AC joint of Geordie Barrett, as we flagged earlier in the podcast in the week with Jamie Wall. Go back and watch that if you haven't caught it. Great chat there with a very, very good man himself, Jamie Wall. Then you've got Leicester Fainga'anuku making his return into the All Blacks, and it is super exciting because you take out a powerful winger like Caleb Clarke, who I believe has been injured, and then you put in an absolute weapon like Leicester Fainga'anuku, running short lines, running direct, running in and around the ruck. He's going to be looking for work. That personally terrifies me as a Wallaby supporter because he is a stellar athlete and he's also a very, very astute rugby player, having worked his trade, applied his trade up in the French top 14, I believe, for Toulon. So we'll see how that goes. Very, very exciting to see him back in the fold. DMAC, I think the Wallabies can probably take a little bit of a Waratahs blueprint and be able to pressure him a lot and see where that gets them in terms of being able to halt the momentum that he tries to generate with his absolute electric skills. Geordie Barrett is partnered with Quinn Tupaea in the centre combination. I did suspect this earlier in the week that we see a Billy Proctor slip out of the 23, and that's exactly what's happened. Quinn Tupaea came on and did an absolute stellar job last weekend in Auckland, really running direct lines, being a headache for the Wallaby defenders and taking a couple of Wallabies defenders with him as he punched through the line. And that kind of impetus is what the All Blacks need, especially going up against someone like Suali'i, who's quite an astute and strong tackler. But if they be able to wrong foot him a little bit, I can imagine that Quinn Tupaea is powerful enough to be able to have him on the outside. Then going down further, we get Scott Razor Robinson has retained Leroy Carter after a stellar performance in Eden Park. He really outmatched Corey Toole, and I'm not surprised at all that Razor Robinson has retained him there because he has been so damn good. Will Jordan, a fullback, and on the bench, you've got Samisoni Takiyahu, George Bauer, and Pasila Tosi. That is a strong, strong, powerful, really, really broad, bulky front row. And that is going to be a lot for Tupou, Robertson, and Josh Nasser to handle in the second half. So their work cut out for them there, and I think that's where the All Blacks will try to apply some pressure in the second half with that less cohesive front row going at it from the Wallabies' perspective. Then you've got Patrick Tuipulotu, who's retained his size and carrying ability, as also experience and prowess at the line out, really makes him such a complete line out operator and also second rower for the All Blacks to be able to bring off the bench. And it is a very much like for like with Lukan Sai They are very similar players, and it's just a shame we won't see those two guys going up against each other again off the bench. Because if you imagine seeing Satiti and also Valetini go up against each other as well as Tuipulotu and Lukan Sai that would have been really, really exciting. So shame, but that's a win there for the All Blacks. I think that gives them more punch in the second row coming off the bench. Also, TT, as I mentioned, in the 20 jersey, Cortez Ratama, Rico Ioane, and Ruben Love. They've got full backline cover with this bench, as well as a little bit of X factor with Rico Ioane and, of course, Ruben Love. It'd be really interesting to see where he slots in, whether a Will Jordan goes onto the wing, Ruben Love slots in at fullback, or whether he does in fact go into the 10 jersey and DMAC slots back. I'd be very surprised to see DMAC or Will Jordan leave the field for Ruben Love. So it'll be exciting to see, and particularly where Rico Ioane slots in. Maybe he goes into outside centre and Quinn Tupaea goes to the wing, depending on how Leicester Fainga'anuku is handling things in his first game back for the All Blacks in a while. As far as tactics go, I think the All Blacks will be looking absolutely to shore up their set piece after last weekend, where they got kind of picked apart at the rolling maul, as well as didn't get the dominance perhaps they were trying to get at scrum time. Likewise, the Wallabies were trying to push their advantage, make sure that they're picking their balls out this time from penalties, and therefore being able to turn those territory and possession percentages around. And I think that will in turn will mean you'll get players like Will Skelton into the game more and really use his prowess. Expect the ruck to be an absolute shit fight, excuse my French, but with the likes of Tom Hooper, Fraser McRyan, and Will Skelton, All Blacks going to have their work cut out for themselves to really be able to protect that ruck, because Will Skelton is a player who will hold 5 All Blacks in there by himself, and he's also someone who will challenge that ruck should it not be a dead ruck. And should you put your head over it, Artie Sevilla, I'm looking at players like that. That is going to be a really challenging position to be in when Will Skelton comes there and cleans out hard, as well as Tom Hooper, who I think grows an extra arm and a leg when he's on the field together with Will Skelton. We really saw that throughout the Lions series. Elsewhere, Beauden Barrett's accurate kicking was a really, really big difference maker for the All Blacks on the weekend. And it wasn't only just a good chase and aerial game from the likes of Will Jordan and Caleb Clarke, it was the accuracy of the kick. So if DMAC can emulate that and Max Jorgensen and Harry Potter haven't learned their lessons, it's going to be another long day at the office for the Wallabies back three, because I really do think that the All Blacks have an opportunity to keep that momentum going from last week, and that worries me as a Wallabies supporter. Elsewhere, Wallabies are probably going to look to go a little bit wider, a little bit earlier. That's not to say they're not going to continue to punch through the middle and play Schmidt ball, which they have been doing so well. But I do think that Lenny Kitau and Joseph Kuso will have a bit of a mandate to be staying out wider, and that will mean that that means that Leicester Fainga'anuku and Quinn Tupaea's cohesion and connection is going to have to be ace. Likewise with Quinn and Leroy Carter, but that is obviously a lot easier because they are Chiefs teammates. Then elsewhere, I'd say for the Wallabies on defense, you just need to be able to watch. Sonny Bill Williams brought this up during the Between Two Posts episode that I mentioned earlier, that Joseph Kuso probably doesn't ride up high enough. It doesn't stick with his man, as in being on the inside, Lenny Kitau, whoever's defending on just one man in from him, as tight as perhaps he should be. And that affects the way that they're able to actually connect with the attack and then to be able to take them down to ground before ceding too much territory. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes at all, if they're a little bit more aggressive. We know I've highlighted on several occasions, even in the last review video analysis piece that video that I did on Sunday. We know that they have their blitz elements, but it's just whether Lenny Kitau and Joseph Akuso can get a little bit more in the face of the All Blacks, because we saw them do it at Twickenham, and that's what caused a whole bunch of issues for the English backline, almost a year ago now. I just need to be able to see that aggression again from them whilst also maintaining that line integrity. So we'll see how that goes. For the All Blacks, they probably want to chance their arm to be able to expose that, but I would say that they weren't looking the slickest when the Wallabies did put that pressure on. So they probably just want to consolidate their skill and go back to the things that they know. But that inside line that caused Quinn Tupaea and Geordie Barrett to be able to course through there and give Roygaard the try at the end, they'll be looking to do that again and again and again, particularly with a powerful and fast athlete like Leicester Fainga'anuku, and that really worries me. So it will be interesting to see how that goes from the Wallabies' perspective. And now I think as far as a prediction goes, I feel that the Wallabies have enough in their game, as well as with the returning players. Obviously, a shame that there's no Tate McDermott, which is a huge loss, and Angus Bell. But I think with the returning players of Skelton and Rob Valetini, and the way that this team knows that it can perform against an All Black side at Eden Park, I just think that they have enough of variety in their game, which is, they scored their tries through rolling mauls, but also through backline play. And had it not been for a great Artie Savia steal, they would have scored another almost, most likely, because they had a mad overlap on the right hand side when Savia made that steal. They would have scored it from broken play. So I think the Wallabies do have enough weapons and enough variety in their arsenal to be able to cause this All Blacks some grief. So I'm going to tip a 3-point win to the Wallabies, which means that they will not win the Rugby Championship, because I do believe they need a bonus point, but I do believe they win nonetheless. And I think that'll matter a lot for the Wallabies and for the sold out stadium at Optus Stadium in Perth. For the sold out crowd there, it is going to be absolute stellar. So enjoy your rugby, enjoy the game. Sorry, this is improving the Springboks and the Argentinians, but we're just going to keep it about the All Blacks and the Wallabies today. So don't forget to like, subscribe, comment what you think about the sides below, what you think about the prediction, what do you think the result is going to be. And I will hope to catch you guys on the video on Sunday with a review session. But until then, enjoy your rugby, whatever you're watching over the weekend, and I'll catch you on the next one.